President Paul Mashatile is expected to launch the 16 Days of Activism for No Violence Against Women and Children in Rustenburg in the Northwest today. But questions have been raised about the effectiveness of these types of campaigns as women continue to battle high levels of gender-based violence. For more on this, we are now joined by the Director for WISE for Africa, Advocate Brenda Madumise. Advocate Madumise, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for making time for us. And the launch of this year's 16 Days of Activism Against Women and Children Abuse also comes on the back of that HRC study that found, amongst others, 7 out of 10 South African men believe that women should obey their husbands. What does this tell us about the psyche of our society and our socialization as well? And the point that's raised in the intro, that do campaigns of this nature really work?
Good morning again, Aldrin, and to the viewers. Listen, I think we've got no choice but to observe these 16 days because remember, it's an international calendar, right? So it starts on the 25th of November. It starts with the International Day of No Violence Against Women, and different countries, including ourselves, will highlight some of the work that we have been doing over the years, in particular this year. And I think the two studies that you're referring to, which is the HSRC that dealt with the prevalence of gendered violence, and the MRC on the prevalence of femicide. Those two studies are telling, and if you have a deputy president who's going to be in Rustenburg, in a province that has got high incidences of femicide and gendered violence, surely it can't be just a speech and making promises. It's about, before going to the Northwest, understanding the prevalence of that gendered violence and how the different stakeholders and players have been addressing gendered violence in the Northwest in particular. So you look at the entire criminal justice system that obtains in Northwest. They can support NGOs that are in Northwest that must work together to ensure that we eliminate gendered violence in South Africa. So for all of us, the 16 days is an international calendar, and we've got no choice but to observe it, but observe it with intention and with meaningful and substantive work that demonstrates our commitment to ending gendered violence.
Yeah, so for a province like the Northwest, which once again has become one of the provinces with the highest unemployment rate, and we know who bears the biggest brunt of that unemployment as well as the high levels of inequality, we are always told that the face is a woman and she is black.
Woman.
What should the response then be from the state? Because on one end, sure, you can speak about fighting the crime, but also how do you ensure that you give women the level of independence that is required so that they can stand on their own? Because one of the points that's also raised in one of the studies is that, sure, yes, I do know what my rights are, I do know what the law says, but I'm also taking some of these decisions to stay in a relationship that is abusive because I've got children to take care of.
Yeah. So, you know, the travesty with this country is that we work in a silo mentality, right? So that silo mentality then gets into when we plan, it's also a silo planning. When we execute, it's a silo execution, right? So I've asked myself a number of times, what do this government do, or what does this government do when it's presented with essays findings, it's presented with the police crime stats, and it's got these studies that have come out? What is there a time for them to sit around the table as a government, meaning from the executive to the legislature, to really address these challenges in a 365 degree up and take a 365 degree approach? So the piecemeal that we have seen over the years of how we address issues in this country is precisely why we find ourselves in this deeper and deeper crisis of a pandemic like gendered violence. So there has not been a concerted effort from government itself, right, to really work in a manner that bolster confidence to its citizens, and show its citizens that it understands the issues at hand. And that's the unfortunate thing for me, that they have not demonstrated that. And for all of us, the deputy president can't go to Northwest and just continue to say the same old tired rhetoric that they have been saying for the longest of time. We want to see decisiveness. We want to see a change in the attitude of those who are employed in government in executing their responsibilities, right? And then it forces us as citizens also to look at ourselves, because at an individual level, I need to do my bit. And what is my bit is understanding that I can't be silent when I see injustice. I can't be silent when I see abuse. And so all of us must come to the party and do our bit. But also, when we do all of that, is that we're going to end impunity. Because at the moment, many of those who perpetrate gendered violence believe that they can get away with it because there are no consequences, right? If you look at the study of MRC on femicide, is that majority of those cases have not been resolved because the police can't find the perpetrators, right? So as a country, we're not investing in modern technology to be able to have a DNA testing that is above, can demonstrate capability of tracing, and linking perpetrators. So why are we not investing in all of these things? Is because we're not. I don't think we've got the will to end gendered violence, because I think certain people, it works when we're talking about power and control. Sometimes we want to hold on to that power and control because it makes us feel like we are better than the rest.
Yeah. So just ahead of the elections, there was the signing of the there was the signing of the Gender-Based Violence and Femicide Bill and the National Prosecuting Amendment Bill. How far do you think that goes into fighting femicide as well as gender-based violence?
No, it's dead in the water. I mean, we signed it in May. We are now in November. We're getting into December. That it was meant to establish the National Council. Why the National Council was to actually coordinate the activities of gendered violence in the entire country. At the moment, we are all over the show. That council has not been established. So, and that's why I'm talking about the will and the political will to do the things that you said yourself. The president signed that bill before the elections. I mean, it was a week before the elections. Surely, we can't wait. It has taken them 6 months, and still no council to actually coordinate and ensure that there's accountability around gendered violence. So there you are. What does it tell you? Is there seriousness? Is there any agency around addressing this issue? I'll say to you, no.
Sure. I guess that's a bit disheartening, Advocate, to hear, because on the one part you look at, for instance, some ideas that government has come up with. Let's as an example, speak about Operation Vulindlela. And we saw that the level of urgency that there was to implement some of the resolutions that have been made to deal with those. So when we speak about economic related stuff, including infrastructure, there seems to be some level of urgency there. Why do you believe that that's not the case when it comes to something like this, which the president himself has declared as a second pandemic?
Aldrin, let's ask ourselves why it has taken women to fight for their existence and their rights, right? Over 200 years. Why men believe that the women have got no right to vote, right? And we have to fight for that. We're still fighting for the right to be heard. We are still fighting for our reproductive rights. We're still fighting for, economic, power that, women deserve to be at the seat of the table and be part of the economy. So if we understand that and that you continue to have this grouping and believing that it continues to be marginalized unless and until we stand up and say this cannot continue to take place. So for us is that the leaders of society, especially those in government, do not see themselves as gender activists in the work that they do. They expect women to do so. So if we work from that mentality, where you don't see how all of this interlinks in your work. Yeah. So if you are in transport and you are planning a road network or a rail network, and you don't understand how women interact with a transport system, and you don't do a gender analysis of that, we are dead in the water, and there is none of that from the top. And that is the travesty for me.
Yeah, and when we speak about that stat that I was sharing a bit earlier on about the 7 out of 10 South African men who believe that women should obey their husbands, on the other end as well is that children, unfortunately, are also brought up in such an environment. What should the response of the state then be around the safeguarding of children? At least earlier this year, there was that announcement around the blacklisting of maintenance defaulters, child maintenance defaulters. But what else to ensure that we protect children?
So we've got the children's rights. We've got the children's court that protects the rights of children. But we need to go further around the violence that is meted out on children. And here, Aldrin, it requires, and we can't divorce ourselves as individuals. We can't divorce ourselves as communities. We can't divorce ourselves as society on the role that we should be playing to protect children and ensure that they can live in a safe place, and we create safe environments for them. The safe environment starts at home. So if a child is not feeling safe at home, there is a problem. And maybe and some of the interventions that other organizations are having are around parenting, because let's all remember and appreciate that all of us don't know what parenting is all about, and we never taught. There's no manual on parenting. You wing it as you go along. Mm-hmm. But I think fundamentally there are certain values that we are all brought up with, and the values of being good, the values of loving, the values of being kind, right? So it starts at home. And we need to do that work and cultivate that work. And as we move into society, whether it's in the schools, whether it's in the churches, because the churches have got the role to play. That religion has been used to hide all sorts of abuse. It's something that it needs to be out in the open, and let's not pretend that it's not happening. But it plays a big role, the church, to unmask all of this and contribute towards a healthy society. So it's schools, it's churches, the workplace. When social harassment raises its head in the workplace, we can't turn a blind eye because we are a JSE listed company. We don't want to have a bad press. It's to tackle it and come out openly to say to your shareholders and to your employees that you are addressing it, and you need to be seen to be doing it, right? And so for me, it's almost all of us have got a role to play in ending gender violence in this country. It can't be just the state. It can't just be institutions. It's all of us making a contribution, and where we see it, we call it out, and it gets addressed. And the most important arm of all of this is the criminal justice system that is effective, that is prompt, that's swift.
And today, of course, later on, the Minister of Police will be releasing those crime statistics, which amongst others will include sexual offences.